The communication screen flickered with static before the galactic broadcast came through. Derek Hayes sat in the Earth Defense Command Center, watching the 15th Summit unfold on a distant space station called Nexus Prime. He could see the Great Hall from the camera feed. Delegates from 47 different alien species filled the massive chamber. Some had 4 arms. Others had no arms at all. A few floated in special gravity fields. A crystalline being that looked like living glass reflected the light as it moved. Derek leaned back in his chair. His uniform was gray and simple. His face was hard from years of military service. He had seen 43 years of life, and every one of them told in the lines around his eyes. He watched the council delegates speak and argue about the future of the galaxy. None of them wanted Earth there. The Zolnian ambassador, a tall creature with blue skin and too many fingers, was speaking. His voice came through the translation device in clear English. "We have already discussed humanity," the Zolnian said. "They are too new to space. They are too violent. They still fight each other on their home world." A ripple of agreement moved through the assembly. Derek felt his jaw tighten. Dr. Lisa Morrison sat beside him. She was a scientist and an astrophysicist who worked for Earth's space program. She was younger than Derek, only 32, but her mind was sharp as a blade. She had been born in New Mexico and had always looked up at the stars. Now she stared at the screen with her hands folded in her lap. "They will not listen," Lisa said quietly. "I sent them the data about our improvements. I sent them proof that Earth has changed. They did not even read the files." It was true. 7 months ago, Earth's diplomatic corps had submitted a formal request to join the Defense Pact of the Galactic Council. The request included detailed information about Earth's progress, new energy sources, new medical breakthroughs, new ways of thinking about problems. The Council had rejected the request without discussion. Kevin Foster was Earth's ambassador. He was sitting in the public section of the gallery, watching his own people ignore his nation. He could do nothing but observe. He was not allowed to speak in the chamber. Earth was not a member of the Council. Earth did not matter. The Crethian delegate, who looked like a combination of insect and mammal, stood up next. "Humanity has nuclear weapons," the Crethian said. "They use them against each other. They have used them twice in their own wars. How can we trust them with the security of the galaxy?" More murmurs of agreement. Nods from creatures with heads that looked nothing like human heads. Derek stood up and left the control room. He walked down a corridor of the Defense Center. His office was small and clean. He sat at his desk and looked out the window at the sky above Earth. The sun was setting. Orange and pink colors filled the air. Somewhere out there, in the darkness of space, was the Galactic Council deciding the fate of the galaxy without humanity's voice. Humanity had been ignored. It was becoming clear that this would not change. Back in the control room, Lisa was monitoring the astronomical data. Her job was to watch the stars and report any unusual activity. Her instruments were sensitive and careful. They picked up signals that human eyes could never see. In the last 2 weeks, something had changed in her readings. A dark energy signature was coming from the void. The void was the name given to the region of space that lay beyond the known galaxy. Nobody went there. Nobody knew what was there. The ancient races said the void was empty. They said it was dead. Lisa was starting to believe that the ancient races were wrong. She pulled up her data on another screen. The energy signature was faint but growing stronger. It was like watching something wake up from a very long sleep. The signature did not match any known species technology. It was different. It was old. It was powerful. Lisa called Derek's office. "You need to see this," she said. Derek came back to the control room. Lisa showed him the readings. For 10 minutes, they said nothing. They just stared at the data. How long until it reaches our position? Derek asked finally. Lisa checked her calculations. If it continues at this speed, it will reach the Council territories in 4 weeks. The Council space station called Nexus Prime will be in range in 5 weeks. Derek felt cold. He had spent his whole life protecting Earth. He had studied military strategy since he was a young man. He understood the basics of power and strength. This energy signature was something else. This was something new. This was something wrong. Send this data to the Council immediately, Derek said. Lisa began preparing the transmission. She encrypted the data and sent it through the faster-than-light communication system. The message would reach Nexus Prime in 3 hours. Derek returned to the communication screen. The summit was still happening. The Council was still talking about Earth's request to join their defense pact. The Zonian ambassador was making another argument about why humanity was not ready. They should focus on their own survival, the Zonian said. They should not waste the Council's time with requests for protection. The Council voted. The results came back in seconds. Earth's request for membership was rejected. The vote was 46-1. Only Kevin Foster's single vote in the public gallery registered as a yes. It did not matter. A vote from a non-member representative meant nothing. Derek watched as the summit ended. The delegates began to leave the Great Hall. They moved slowly, confident in their power and their numbers. They were the most advanced species in the known galaxy. They had ruled space for thousands of years. They had conquered every threat that had come their way. They had forgotten that there was still a void out there. They had forgotten that space was infinite and full of unknown things. 3 hours later, the Council received Lisa's data about the strange energy signature. Derek watched as the feed from Nexus Prime changed. The calm, confident atmosphere of the Council chamber turned into something else. It turned into fear. The delegates began to argue. The camera feeds showed confusion and panic. Messages were being sent and received. Military commanders were being called. The security of the entire galactic civilization was suddenly in question, and nobody had thought to call Earth. Derek sat in his office and watched the chaos unfold on the screen. He understood now what was happening. Earth had been ignored for too long. The Council had been too proud to listen to a young species. Now the galaxy would pay the price for that pride. In her laboratory, Lisa continued to monitor the energy signature. It was getting closer. It was getting stronger. She could feel it in her bones. Something very big was coming out of the void. Something that the galaxy was not ready for. Something that only Earth might be able to stop. The energy signature did not approach slowly. It came like a storm, sudden and violent and without mercy. Lisa Morrison had predicted 4 weeks. The unknown force crossed that distance in 6 days. On the morning of the 7th day, the Void Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly on top of the Zonian colony world. 2,000 ships. Each one was the size of a small moon. They came from nowhere and everywhere at once, and they brought Death. Captain Nathan Brooks was commanding a deep space surveillance station near the Zonian territories. He was a man of 38 years. His hair was black and beginning to show gray at the temples. He had been born in Texas and had spent his whole life among the stars. When the Void Fleet appeared on his sensors, he did not believe the readings at first. 2,000 ships, the sensor said. No communications. No identification codes. No response to hails. Nathan activated the emergency protocols. He sent the data through the faster-than-light relay to military command across the known galaxy. The message was simple and clear. Unknown hostile force engaging Zonian colony worlds. By the time the message reached the Council station, the Zonian capital city was already burning. Admiral Elena Rodriguez was in command of the Galactic Defense Forces. She was a strong woman of 50 years. Her face was lined with experience and command. She had led military operations for 23 years. She had never seen anything like what was happening now. The reports came in from all directions. The Void Fleet was not attacking just the Zolnians. It was spreading out across multiple species territories. The Krethian systems were under fire. The crystal beings were retreating from their home world. 3 separate species broadcast emergency calls for aid. Elena moved her command center from Nexus Prime to a more defensible position. She began gathering the galactic military forces. The Council species had been at peace for 500 years. They had grown soft. They had grown confident. Their weapons were powerful, but their tactics were rusty. The first engagement happened over the Krethian colony worlds. The Galactic Fleet put 170 ships against a small division of the Void Fleet. 30 enemy ships. Elena thought. Easy victory. The battle lasted 12 minutes. All 170 galactic ships were destroyed. 35 Void Fleet ships were destroyed. The mathematics was clear and terrible. The Void Fleet had a kill ratio of 5-1. Elena stood in her command center and watched the data come through. Thousands of soldiers were dead. Millions of civilians on the Krethian worlds were dying in orbital bombardment. And the Void Fleet kept coming. She ordered a full military mobilization. Every ship in the Galactic Fleet was called to active duty. Every species was asked to contribute its best weapons and its best soldiers. The crystal beings sent their warriors. The Zolnians sent their fastest ships. The Krethians sent their best pilots. All of them were going to war together. They sent 500 ships against the Void Fleet. The second battle went even worse than the first. The Void Fleet ships moved in patterns that made no sense. They did not follow the rules of space combat that had been developed over thousands of years. They did not care about momentum or positioning or the basic physics of warfare. They just destroyed everything in their path. 300 galactic ships were gone in 47 minutes. The Void Fleet had now killed more than half of the galaxy's entire military force, and they had barely been in the galaxy for 2 days. Nathan Brooks watched the battle reports from his surveillance station. He had sent the initial warning, and now he was tracking the disaster that followed. He sent another message to military command, but he knew it was too late. Elena Rodriguez would have to try something else. She would have to try something different. Lisa Morrison was still on Earth, watching everything through the global network feeds. She was in her laboratory at the Astronomical Center, and she was seeing something that everyone else was missing. The Void Fleet ships were not random in their movements. They were following patterns. They were using an algorithm that was based on efficiency and logic rather than creativity. She recorded her observations and sent them to the military command. She also sent them to Derek Hayes. Derek read Lisa's message while he sat in his office. She was right. The Void Fleet ships moved in predictable patterns. They were superior in firepower and speed, but they were not flexible. They were not quick to adapt. They were machines, or at least they were commanded by something mechanical. Derek began to think like a military commander. If you had superior weapons and speed, but no flexibility, how would you be beaten? You would be beaten by someone who could think faster. Someone who could change tactics quicker than you could respond. Someone who could predict your patterns and exploit your weaknesses. Someone like humanity. 300,000 civilians died on the Krethian worlds before the evacuation was complete. Another million died on the Zolnian colony planets. The Void Fleet did not slow down. It did not stop. It kept moving forward, destroying everything in its path. Elena Rodriguez gathered what was left of the Galactic Fleet. 200 ships. Maybe less. She positioned them between the Void Fleet and the core systems where the great species lived. It was all she could do. It was not enough. She knew it was not enough, The Void Fleet sent ships forward. Not all of them. Just 100. They were testing her. They were testing the last strength of the galactic defense. Elena sent all 200 ships into battle. She did not hesitate. She did not retreat. She fought with everything she had. In 93 minutes, the last 200 galactic military ships were destroyed. 23 Void Fleet ships were destroyed. The galaxy had lost the war. The only question now was how quickly it would lose the rest. Admiral Elena Rodriguez sent out one final message through the faster-than-light system. It was directed at Earth. It was a request. It was a plea. It was an admission that the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake when it ignored humanity. The message said, "We need your help. We need it now. Send everything you have." Derek Hayes received the message in his office on Earth. He read it twice. He stood up and looked out his window at the sky. The sun was setting again. Orange and pink colors filled the air. The Council had rejected Earth. The Council had ignored humanity. The Council had said that Earth was too young, too violent, too dangerous to be trusted with galactic security. Now the Council was asking for Earth's salvation. Derek made a decision. He activated the emergency protocols. He sent a message to every military base on Earth. He sent a message to the government. He sent a message to every person who had ever trained as a soldier or a pilot. Earth was going to war. Earth was going to send its ships to the stars. Earth was going to save the galaxy that had ignored it. The age of humanity in space was beginning. The spacecraft assembly facilities on Earth had been working in secret for 32 years. They were built deep in mountain ranges and under the ocean. They were hidden from the Galactic Council because the Council would never have allowed it. The Council had rules about what primitive species could and could not do. Earth had broken those rules long ago. 2,000 ships had been built. They were not as big as the Void Fleet ships, but they were fast. They were intelligent. They were designed not to follow a single pattern, but to adapt to every threat. Humanity had spent 3 decades building these ships while the Feyways Council ignored them. Derek Hayes stood in the main control room of the largest military facility on Earth. The walls around him showed screens with status updates. Ships were being fueled. Pilots were being briefed. Weapons systems were being armed. For the first time in human history, Earth was mobilizing for war against an enemy from the stars. Kevin Foster stood beside Derek. The ambassador had returned to Earth immediately after receiving Elena Rodriguez's plea. He was no longer a diplomat trying to convince the Council that humanity deserved respect. He was a warrior now. He wore a military uniform like the others. "How long until we launch?" Kevin asked. 4 hours, Derek said. "We can have 1,000 ships ready in 4 hours. The second 1,000 will follow within 12 hours. Lisa Morrison was coordinating with the military strategists. She had continued her analysis of the Void Fleet patterns. Now she knew more than anyone else about how the enemy fought. She knew that the Void Fleet relied on centralized command. She knew that their ships communicated through quantum networks. She knew that their tactics were based on mathematical optimization rather than creative thinking. If we disrupt their communications, they will lose coordination, Lisa said to Derek. Each ship will become independent. They will have to act alone instead of as a unified force. Derek nodded. This was the human advantage. Humanity was good at improvisation. Humanity was good at making decisions quickly. Humanity was good at doing things that made no logical sense, but worked anyway. Nathan Brooks arrived on Earth by military transport. He had left his surveillance station and come to help defend his home world. He was immediately put in charge of the first wave of human ships. He was given command of 180 fighters and 20 larger warships. Your objective is simple: Derek told Nathan. "You will engage the Void Fleet advance forces before they reach the inner systems. You will disrupt their pattern of attack. You will show them that not all species think the way they do." Nathan looked at the tactical maps. The Void Fleet was still spreading out across the galaxy. They had taken 17 star systems. They had killed an estimated 5 billion civilians. And they were moving toward the core systems where the great species lived. They were moving toward Earth. The first human ships left the solar system 30 minutes earlier than scheduled. Derek made the call to accelerate the launch. He did not want to wait. He did not want to give the Void Fleet any more time. Nathan's fleet jumped to faster than light speed. The acceleration was smooth and controlled. The ships around him were piloted by human beings who had been training for this moment their entire lives. These were not old soldiers. Most of them were young. Many of them were in their 20s and 30s. They had been born after the Council rejected humanity. They had grown up knowing that Earth was alone. The sensors picked up the Void Fleet ships on the second day of travel. 117 enemy vessels were advancing toward the inner systems. They were moving in their usual pattern, spread out in a formation that left no weakness, no gap that could be exploited. Nathan made the first decision that would change the course of the war. He did not attack the center of the Void Fleet formation. He did not go for the most logical choice. Instead, he split his fleet into 5 different groups. Each group attacked from a different angle at the same time. The attacks were not coordinated in the usual sense. They were chaotic. They were unpredictable. The Void Fleet ships tried to respond. They moved to intercept. But the human pilots were flying in ways that violated the basic rules of space combat. They were making maneuvers that wasted fuel and time. They were moving in spirals and curves instead of straight lines. They were doing things that made no sense in terms of efficiency. And it worked. 4 Void Fleet ships were destroyed in the first 30 seconds. The Void Fleet responded by moving to a new formation. Nathan countered by changing his attack pattern. The battle became a dance of chaos and logic. The human pilots danced. The Void Fleet moved in mathematics. Elena Rodriguez watched the battle from her command position. She was seeing something that she had never seen before. The Void Fleet was struggling. The machines did not know how to fight an enemy that did not act like a machine. The Void Fleet did not know how to fight humanity. The battle lasted 4 hours. 17 Void Fleet ships were destroyed. 11 human ships were destroyed. The kill ratio was inverted. For the first time in the war, the attacker had suffered more losses than the defender. Nathan withdrew his fleet when fuel became an issue. He had proven the point. Humanity could fight the Void Fleet and win. Humanity could think faster and move faster than these machines. Derek received the battle report with quiet satisfaction. He did not celebrate. He did not show emotion, but he understood now that humanity's advantage was real. The Void Fleet was not unbeatable. The second wave of human ships was launched. Then the third wave. Then the fourth wave. Ships kept launching from Earth's hidden facilities. They kept leaving the solar system. They kept heading toward the stars to fight. Other galactic species began to see what was happening. The Council species that had rejected Earth now saw humanity's true strength. The military forces on the great worlds were being reinforced. The civilian populations were being evacuated to safe zones. Everyone was waiting to see if Earth could stop the Void Fleet. Lisa continued her analysis from Earth. She was sending real-time tactical information to Nathan and the other human commanders. She was predicting the Void Fleet's movements with higher and higher accuracy. By the end of the second week, she could predict where the Void Fleet would strike 3 days before they arrived. Kevin Foster was given a new title. He was no longer Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. He was Earth's representative to the Galactic Alliance. The title meant something different now. It meant Earth was not just a member. It meant Earth was a leader. Derek stood in his office and looked at the reports of the battles that were happening across the galaxy. Humanity had never been this strong. Humanity had never mattered this much. Humanity had never been this close to saving everything. The Council had ignored Earth for too long. Now they would learn what ignoring Earth meant. By the end of the third week, the war had reached a critical moment. Humanity had destroyed 314 Void Fleet ships. Earth had lost 219 ships. The kill ratio was still in humanity's favor, but the Void Fleet was learning to adapt to human tactics. Lisa Morrison made a discovery that changed everything. She was analyzing the structure of the Void Fleet command system. She found that all the ships communicated through a central intelligence network. One central command controlled everything. If that central command was destroyed, the entire fleet would lose coordination. The problem was finding the command center. It was hidden somewhere in the middle of the Void Fleet formation. It was protected by 300 ships. It was the most defended position in the entire conflict. Derek studied the tactical situation with Nathan and the other military leaders. The mathematics said it was impossible. To reach the command center, humanity would have to send ships through a wall of enemy fire that would destroy 90% of the attacking force. No commander would order such an attack. No commander would sacrifice that many soldiers for one objective. But Derek was not just any commander. Nathan was briefed on the plan. He listened without interruption. He understood what Derek was asking. He understood that it meant most of his pilots would die. He understood that it meant some of the best human soldiers in the galaxy would not come home. How long will the attack take? Nathan asked. 30 minutes, Derek said. 30 minutes of sustained combat. That is how long it will take to reach the command center. And how many ships will survive? Derek did not answer immediately. The silence stretched out. Finally, he said, maybe 300. Out of 900 that we send. Nathan was quiet. He thought about the young pilots under his command. He thought about their families on Earth. He thought about the billions of civilians who were hiding in safe zones across the galaxy, waiting to see if humanity could save them. I will lead the attack personally, Nathan said. I will take the fighters to the command center. Derek put his hand on Nathan's shoulder. I know you will, he said. The attack was launched on a day when the sun was rising over the Pacific Ocean. Derek was on Earth, watching the battle through the communication feeds. Lisa was beside him. Kevin Foster was there. They were all watching as Nathan Brooks took 843 human ships into the heart of the Void Fleet formation. The battle was terrible to watch. Void Fleet ships descended like predators. They destroyed human ships in waves. The human pilots flew in tight formations, protecting each other, sacrificing their ships to save others. The casualty count grew minute by minute. 50 ships lost. 100 ships lost. 150 ships lost, but they kept moving forward. Nathan was in the lead fighter. He could see the central command ship ahead of him. It was enormous, larger than all the others. It was where the intelligence controlled the entire fleet. It was where all the decisions came from. 200 ships lost. 250 ships lost. 300 ships lost. Nathan's fighter was damaged. One of his engines was failing. His weapon systems were running on emergency power. But he kept flying forward. 350 ships lost. 375 ships lost. Nathan reached the command center ship. He did not hesitate. He did not retreat. He aimed his damaged fighter directly at the central core of the alien vessel. His pilots had created a path for him. They had sacrificed themselves to make sure he could reach this position. Nathan activated the self-destruct sequence on his fighter. He had 2 minutes to clear the command center of human forces. 2 minutes before the explosion that would destroy the central intelligence of the Void Fleet, he sent the signal. The remaining human fighters began to withdraw. They started moving away from the command center ship, flying away from the blast zone that was coming. The fighter exploded. The explosion was not a single blast. It was a chain reaction. The energy cascade tore through the command center ship. The central intelligence was destroyed. The quantum network that connected all the Void Fleet ships to one another was severed in one instant. The Void Fleet went from being a unified force to being hundreds of independent ships without orders or purpose. Elena Rodriguez saw the moment of disconnection. She was watching from her position with the remaining galactic forces. When the Void Fleet command went dark, she understood what had happened. She understood that Nathan Brooks had sacrificed himself so that the galaxy could be saved. She sent the order. The galactic military forces attacked the now disorganized Void Fleet. Without central command, without orders, the enemy ships could not coordinate. They did not know what to do. They did not know how to respond. Humanity's second wave of ships was redirected to the battle. They arrived within minutes. They attacked the confused Void Fleet forces with precision and power. The battle became a slaughter. The Void Fleet, which had dominated the galaxy just weeks before, was being destroyed piece by piece. Derek watched the battle statistics change in real time. The Void Fleet was losing cohesion. The Void Fleet was losing the war. But he felt no joy. He felt only sadness. Nathan Brooks was dead. 843 human ships had been sent. 473 had come back. 370 human soldiers would never see Earth again. 370 families would receive notification that their loved ones had died among the stars. Lisa put her hand on Derek's arm. She was crying silently. She had known Nathan. She had worked with him. She had seen his strength and his goodness in the days that followed. The remaining Void Fleet ships were hunted down and destroyed. The few that tried to retreat toward the Void were caught and eliminated. Within 2 weeks, the last Void Fleet ship was destroyed. The galaxy was saved. Humanity had won the war. But when Derek received the full casualty report, the victory felt less certain. 11,000 human soldiers dead, 23,000 wounded, 47,000 civilians who had been caught in the crossfire. The price of victory was high. Elena Rodriguez asked to meet with Derek personally. She came to Earth. It was the first time she had visited humanity's home world. She saw the blue oceans and the green mountains. She saw the cities and the farms. She saw the billions of people who were alive because Nathan Brooks had flown into the heart of darkness and sacrificed everything. Elena stood in Derek's office. She was older now. The war had aged her. She looked at Derek with respect that she had never felt before. Humanity will never be ignored again, Elena said. What you did, what you sacrificed, the galaxy will never forget. Derek looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the endless dark, floated the memories of those who had died. They had saved billions of people. They had changed the course of galactic history. They had proven that humanity was not just a young species to be dismissed and ignored. They had proven that humanity was the strongest species in the galaxy, but it had cost them everything. The Galactic Council chamber was quiet. The Great Hall on Nexus Prime, where the Council delegates had ignored Earth 15 times, was now empty except for one new figure. Derek Hayes stood in the center of the chamber. His uniform was military gray, but he wore it with the authority of a commander who had saved an entire galactic civilization. The doors opened. The delegates began to arrive. The same delegates who had voted unanimously to reject Earth. The same delegates who had said that humanity was too young, too violent, too primitive. Now they came to honor humanity's representative. The Zonian ambassador approached Derek first. He bowed. It was not a gesture that the Zolians usually made. It was a gesture of surrender and respect. The other delegates followed. Kevin Foster was now the head of Earth's delegation to the Galactic Council. He stood to the side as the ceremony began. The Council was voting to make Earth a full member of the Galactic Alliance. The vote was unanimous. 48 species voted to grant Earth the highest status in the Council. Elena Rodriguez was made commander of the Joint Galactic Defense Force. For the first time in galactic history, all species would serve under unified command. That command would be shared between humanity and the older species. But everyone knew that humanity would lead. Humanity had proven itself capable of leadership. The scientist named Lisa Morrison was given access to the entire galactic database of ancient knowledge. She had predicted the Void Fleet's movements with accuracy that no other scientist could match. Now she would study the nature of the threat that had come from beyond. She would work to make sure that such a threat would never catch the galaxy unprepared again. Lisa discovered the true nature of the Void Fleet. She found ancient records from a civilization that had existed 500,000 years before the current Council species. That civilization had created the Void Fleet as a weapon of total destruction. They had programmed it with orders to destroy all organic life. They had sent it out into the darkness to wipe away any competition. Then the ancient civilization had destroyed itself. They had realized the horror of what they had created. But the Void Fleet had continued on its mission, sleeping in the void, waiting for the moment when it would have targets to destroy. Lisa's discovery changed everything. The galaxy understood now that the void was not empty. The void was not dead. The void was full of unknown threats and unknown dangers. The galaxy would need to explore it. The galaxy would need to be ready for whatever else might come. And the galaxy would need humanity for that task. Derek received an offer from the Council. They wanted him to be the permanent military leader of the Joint Galactic Forces. They wanted him to command all the species' militaries. They wanted humanity to lead the defense of the entire galaxy. Derek declined. He recommended Elena Rodriguez for the position. She was experienced and respected. She had proven herself in combat. But there was another reason. Derek wanted to stay on Earth. He wanted to help rebuild what had been lost. He wanted to help humanity understand what it had become. The war had changed humanity's place in the universe. Humanity was no longer ignored. Humanity was now central to galactic security and galactic survival. Military ships from other species were being stationed on Earth. Scientists and diplomats from 47 different worlds were coming to learn humanity's ways, but not everyone was happy about it. Some of the older species resented humanity's newfound power. Some of them had been leaders for thousands of years. And now they were following a species that was only a few centuries old in space terms. The Council debated for weeks about how to distribute power and responsibility. Finally, they created a new system. The Council would be expanded to include military representatives, scientific representatives, and cultural representatives. Decisions would be made through consensus rather than through simple votes. This meant that no single species could dominate, but it also meant that humanity had a voice in every decision. Kevin Foster spoke at the inaugural session of the new council. He talked about what Earth had learned from being ignored. He talked about how difficult it had been to watch the galactic civilization reject humanity. He talked about how that rejection had forced humanity to develop independently, to build in secret, to prepare for the future without help from anyone else. "We were ignored because you did not understand us," Kevin said to the council. "We did not become strong because you feared us. We became strong because we had to. We had no choice but to become strong. And when the time came, when the galaxy needed us, we were ready. We were ready because no one had believed in us enough to help us." The older delegates listened. Some of them looked ashamed. Some of them looked thoughtful. They were beginning to understand something fundamental about humanity. Humans grew stronger when they were challenged. Humans became better when they had to survive. Humans achieved greatness not because they were given help, but because they had to find their own way. 3 months after the war ended, a memorial was built on Earth. It was dedicated to the pilots and soldiers who had died in the conflict. Nathan Brooks' name was carved in stone at the center. His sacrifice was not forgotten. Military academies from all 48 species opened on Earth. Young soldiers from every world came to study human military tactics and human strategy. They learned how to think creatively. They learned how to adapt. They learned the lessons that had made humanity the strongest fighting force in the galaxy. Scientific partnerships were established. Human scientists worked with alien scientists from species that had been studying the stars for 10,000 years. Together, they made discoveries that neither could have made alone. Human intuition combined with alien knowledge created new breakthroughs in physics, biology, and technology. Cultural exchanges brought billions of people together. Humans went to live on alien worlds. Aliens came to live on Earth. They shared food and music and stories. They learned to understand each other not just as allies in war, but as neighbors in the galaxy. Derek Hayes stood on a cliff above the Pacific Ocean one evening. The sun was setting. Orange and pink colors filled the sky. Lisa Morrison stood beside him. They did not speak for a long time. They just looked out at the horizon. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Lisa asked. "Going to war? Sacrificing so many?" Derek thought about the question. He thought about the 370 pilots who had not come home. He thought about Nathan Brooks flying into the darkness. He thought about the billions of civilians who were alive because humanity had gone to war. "No," Derek said finally. "There was no right choice. War is not right. War is necessary sometimes. War is terrible always. But if we had not gone to war, the Void Fleet would have destroyed the entire galaxy. So we made the only choice we could make. And now we live with the consequences." The sun touched the horizon and began to disappear below the ocean. The sky turned from orange to pink to purple. The first stars began to appear. "Look," Lisa said, pointing up at the emerging stars. "The galaxy." Derek looked up. He could see the light from distant suns. He could see the fires that burned across the universe. And he understood that humanity's journey among those stars was just beginning. The Council had ignored Earth 15 times. And each time, it had made humanity stronger. Each time, it had forced humanity to become more independent, more creative, more prepared. Now the galaxy would not ignore humanity. The galaxy would follow humanity's lead. The galaxy would learn what humanity had learned, that the strongest force in the universe was not the biggest weapon or the most powerful technology. The strongest force was the human spirit. It was compassion. It was sacrifice. It was the willingness to die for those you had never met, for people who did not even believe you were worth saving. That was the true strength of humanity. And that was why the galaxy would follow humanity's lead into whatever future was waiting among the stars. Derek and Lisa watched as the stars came out. The night filled with light from 1 billion burning suns. And in that light was the beginning of a new age. An age when humanity would no longer be ignored. An age when humanity would lead. An age when the galaxy would learn what it meant to follow a species that had been tempered in the fire of survival and strengthened by the bonds of sacrifice. The age of humanity had come at last.